the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where today we'll be talking about two thrilling IPL contests. We're going to do it kind of in reverse order. We're going to talk about today's game first while it's fresh in the memory, as Kolkata Knight Riders blew it, basically, against Mumbai. And then we'll rewind to yesterday in the game between Punjab Kings and Sanju Samson, where Arshdeep Singh sort of managed to nick it at the end. I'm Jack Hope. I'm here with Max Rowe-Brown. How are you doing, Max?
Hello. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
And I'm here with Ross Legg. How are you doing, Ross?
I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad. I'm kind of in that bit where being a Spurs fan and being an England fan got me very ready for Kolkata Knight Riders' collapse today. It was joyous to see.
Joyous. Obviously, as a Mumbai Indians fan, it was incredibly joyous. I thought the game was gone. What do they have? Like a 5-10% chance of winning about 11-12 overs into the Kolkata Knight Riders innings, and then they pulled it out of the bag. All the pitch fell apart. I mean, it depends on which way you look at it. But you're not allowed to blame the pitch in Chennai. We learnt that in the Test series. It's never the pitch's fault in India. So Kolkata must be rubbish. Max, would you? In fact, no, Ross, we've got some news, haven't we? So why don't you give people some news and let them know what they should do in terms of subscribing, etc. And then Max, you can summarise today's play.
Yeah, so the big news, and it's the big announcement, is that Woodstock Cricket have seen in their right mind to not only sponsor one of the best cricket podcasts on the planet. We're worldwide, aren't we? We're kind of number one in India, number one probably in France. I don't know if they like cricket, but ultimately Woodstock have decided that they want to sponsor us, and that is what you can see on here. And then in a few weeks' time, there will be a discount code for all of our listeners to buy some of their fantastic merchandise on, which includes handmade cricket bats that we went to visit yesterday on our Big Pod adventure. And ultimately, get yourself some great gear just like us, because if we get great bats like the one Jack is holding up there, it means that we are great players. So the better the kit you have, obviously, the better players you have. So there we go. So thank you very much to Woodstock for doing that. And you should like and subscribe to this video. And we are going to have a number of videos with Woodstock talking about how to pick a good cricket bat, what the process is at their fantastic new showroom up in Nottinghamshire, and then also how much fun we had. So anything I missed there?
Yeah, you didn't say Woodstock enough times, actually. Do you reckon you could say Woodstock about 17 or 18 more times in a sentence?
It's contractually obliged to say it 20 times in the opening 2 minutes of the video.
Seriously, for a good cricket bat.
Seriously, go check them out on the internet. We'll put the link in the description. It's not there at the moment, but we'll put it in at some point. Max Rowe-Brown, there was some cricket on today. What happened in the cricket? Why? My whole introduction to this show is about Mumbai Indians actually being really bad, and our preview being wrong, and me being really sad. But all of those things flipped on their head. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, you may have had to rip up your notes, much like the rest of us. Mumbai Indians versus KKR. Mumbai Indians again were put in to bat first on the Chennai pitch, and KKR had come with some plans, it seems, as they turned your typical bowling lineup in a T20 on its head and bowled throughout the power play with spin, and then followed it up with their pace bowlers after that. And it was an interesting tactic, and it worked pretty well. As Mumbai Indians didn't really get going, apart from Sky. Really, no one could fathom what was going on. KKR bowled very well to their plans and kept it tight, and ultimately restricted Mumbai Indians to 152, which looked like it was probably not going to be enough. And it certainly didn't look like it was going to be enough after KKR came storming out with Shubman Gill and Nitish Rana putting on a very good opening partnership. And got to the stage where KKR needed pretty much a run a ball for the last 4 overs, and I certainly thought, and I think a lot of other people probably thought, that was that. Unfortunately for KKR, a combination of Rahul Chahar bowling very well, and, well, the middle order of KKR not existing, meant that Mumbai Indians were back in with a shout by the end, and for some reason KKR decided they didn't want to score the remaining runs. They just happy to block out for a losing draw, I think, or something, and a final over of 15 required, and Trent Boult, well, wrapped it up beautifully, and that was that, and we were all sort of sat there wondering what we'd just witnessed.
It was like a pretty confusing cricket match. Overall, I think, and I mean one of the difficulties in doing a live show 15 minutes after a match which was going to script A, and then went all usual suspects on us in the last 15 minutes, is that all of my notes refer basically to bad things that Mumbai Indians did, which is probably a bit harsh. So let's start with something they did well in the batting department, or someone who did bat well. I think in the whole match, Surya Kumar Yadav has to be the one who we point to and say that guy can play in those conditions, doesn't he, Ross?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a fanboy over Sky, and I think there was a shot, I think it was of Pat Cummins, where he kind of stood across and helicopter shotted him out of the stadium. I mean, just being able to do that to a Premier bowler, the guy is on a different planet, and I think when it comes to the batting on that pitch, especially in Chennai, even some of the greats are struggling on it, right? But I mean, Sky, there's no limit to Sky for him, so fair play. I think it was quite interesting to see how Rohit Sharma kind of struggled, and if we're going to have a bit of balance on the podcast, we kind of talk sometimes about Virat Kohli when he's struggling kind of to press on and make any kind of real changes into kind of his scoring rate. And here, Sharma kind of struggled with the same kind of thing, and he couldn't really excel. He took up, how many balls were it? About 30-odd deliveries for his 40-odd. And you're kind of sitting there going, well, actually, they needed a few more in the tank. And Max, I think before the show, you said that the average score at Chennai is, 172?
173, I think they said.
173. So, yeah.
First inning score.
So, yeah, I mean, Kolkata Knight Riders properly bottled this. It was an under par performance from Mumbai, and Jack, as I said, I mean, I'm happy to go in and why Mumbai should not have won this game.
It's interesting that your idea of balance is to slate both Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma, the two most popular cricketers in India, probably. I'm going to distance myself from that statement. I actually think the wicket probably wasn't very good. I know, Max, we were saying that 170 odd is like par batting first, maybe. That was a bit of a crap pitch for explosive T20 cricket. Anyway, it did produce a thriller. Let's talk about some of KKR's plans, because I think it's actually one of those games where both teams bowled well and neither team really batted particularly effectively. We've basically talked about the good batter. So let's talk about what KKR did. You've already talked about how they bowled spin. Yeah, so they bowled 5 overs of spin in the first 6 overs. Where do you think that plan came from? Is that Owen Morgan, master tactician, or is something else at play here?
I think that is a classic bit of brains trust between Brendan McCullum and Owen Morgan. I have a feeling that now, with people keep going on about a word that I really don't like, which is three-peat, because it's another one of those horrible things that people have smushed together to try and make it sound good, and it doesn't sound good, I'm afraid. But I guess that's just my opinion. Anyway, I digress. I think what we're seeing is that with the dominance that Mumbai have shown over the last couple of years, and particularly the fact that they were pretty much untouchable last year, people are now looking at ways to actually maybe mix it up and come up with plans of how to beat them. And I think that's what we saw today with that plan to bowl spin up top. And Brendan McCullum himself said it was a deliberate plan to bowl slower Rohit and Quinton de Kock up the top, and try and mix it up and get them basically not to get off to such a good start as they tend to do, and then up the pace at the end later in the innings. So it worked well, didn't it?
It did. I'd throw Nathan Lehmann's name into the ring there. I think his hands were all over that decision. Nathan Lehmann, if you don't know, is like the one of the founders of CricViz. Everyone knows who they are. So I think there was a very analytical approach to bowling so much spin. The 10 overs of spin in the Mumbai batting innings went for 67. Which is really like putting the pressure on them. And what does that mean? The rest of them went for over 9 and over, which kind of demonstrates how hard, or over 8 and over, sorry, how hard it was to bat against the turning ball, particularly once it got a little bit softer. I thought. Lots of people have been saying as well that this Chennai stint of the IPL would be pretty tough for Mumbai, and I think we did sort of see why their team, which was so awesome in the UAE, and I think will be like really overwhelmed teams when they get out of Chennai. Why people were saying that? They really struggled. All of their hitters looked like they just couldn't find the timing that was so devastating for them in the last couple of IPLs. And to be fair, on the other side, Owen Morgan looked all at sea. Andre Russell looked like a shell of Andre Russell. So you can see why Mumbai weren't fancied to win these games in Chennai, and their spinners, they bowled all right today, but they are probably in the bottom half in terms of if you ranked all the teams' spin departments. I think Mumbai would be in the bottom half there, but they took the victory. Final thing I think we should talk about in the first half of the innings is obviously the finest display of fast bowling that certainly I can remember. Max Rowe-Brown, Andre Russell, talk to me, baby.
Well, he just basically came in, saw a dirty floor, brought his mop and bucket, and cleaned up, because that's essentially what happened there, isn't it? We saw him. I basically think what we saw in that innings was every plan that KKR laid out pretty much coming to fruition, and they did really well to stick to their plans. That was the thing. They had plans. I think it was obvious that they were trying to bowl a sort of back of a length tight line so that people couldn't get it away, because as we saw, the only person who could really do that was Surya Kumar Yadav, and then towards the end with Andre Russell. I mean, he used the angles really well, basically hiding the ball wide for the first couple of wickets and packing the field on that side. And, he nailed those plans. And then in the last over, he was, shall we say, benefiting from a situation where a lot of tailenders were trying to score sixes and plonking them to fielders. So he's had a great day, hasn't he? Up to that point,
yes.
Come in and bowled 2 overs and taken 5 wickets. He's basically scored the equivalent of Harry Kane's hat-trick against Panama in the World Cup.
He nearly took a wicket with every other ball, which is good going. I don't know if you know much about strike rates, Ross, but anything below like 20 is impressive. So
okay.
He was going at like 2.2. Let's flip over then to the second innings. 152. We thought that was slightly below par. And it looked like it was going to be sort of well below par. They got off to a good start, did Kolkata Knight Riders. 72 for 1 at the end of the 9th over. And then the wheels came off a little bit. So I'm just going to read through the scorecard. Usually this is a bit boring, but this one is quite illustrative of the collapse, and it is quite a funny one. So 57, 33, 5, 7, 9, 8, 9, 0, 2. And all of those people in
meaning
single digits.
that Extras was the third top scorer in that innings.
And all of those people who scored or single digits did it at the strike rate of 100 or lower. So nobody even came in like hit a 6 and then got out. Everyone just got bogged down. And they bottled it from a good position, didn't they, Ross?
Yeah, they really, really did. So this was. We talked about Owen Morgan's captaincy and Owen Morgan's approach when England played India, and it was the first ODI, or the first T20 match where England were in a good position and then threw it away. And Jack, you kind of talked around that actually the England team aren't going to be worried about that because that is the way in which they play. Here, there was a bit where they needed 60 from 60.
It was ish. It was a bit more than that. It might have been 70 from 60. It wasn't that many runs in the scheme of like an elite level T20 game.
And for them to kind of just completely throw it away, was it completely complete reckless abandon, or was this just a kind of case of a mental capitulation? What would you think it was?
Right, so I think there are a few things at play here. One, when the ball got a little bit older, it started to grip and it was way harder to bat. We saw that in Mumbai's innings. We saw it in Kolkata's innings. I think the other thing is, it took a little while at the crease to sort of get the pace of the pitch. It was an interesting one where actually you needed a good anchor. This is the sort of game that like Virat Kohli wins this chase every single time because he's very good at sort of picking up the pace of a wicket, finding unusual areas to score, and that isn't really KKR's forte. I don't think. Where else did it go wrong? I mean, mentally, there probably was a little bit of panic. I think the game plan probably wasn't, that bright. A lot of people were hitting the ball up in the air when maybe they didn't need to be doing that, and so it's fine to bat with intent, but on a wicket where you've seen people have success once they face sort of 10, 15 balls, when you have that long to bat, maybe if you're Owen Morgan or you're Shakib Al Hassan, or even Rahul Tripathi, maybe you think, if I can be 10 off 10, then I'll have a look and I'll try and up my scoring rate from there. So going against what I normally say, actually, I think on this kind of wicket, you did need to have a different game plan. The other thing I'd say that was a big factor in this is the captaincy of Rohit Sharma. So I think what we saw today was kind of a display of how tactically, and by tactically I mean in-game captaincy, how his in-game captaincy is probably the best in the IPL. So a couple of examples of that. When Owen Morgan came out to the crease, Rahul Chahar was bowling with a slip and a leg slip, and they actually nearly did get Morgan caught at leg slip. At this point, they needed a 7 and over or less. So that's really bold captaincy. It was the only chance. At that point, I checked WinViz. Mumbai Indians had a 15% chance of winning at that point, and the only way they were going to win was if they took loads of wickets. Many captaincies, most captains, I think, in the IPL would have continued defending though with the field. Mm-hmm. So it was great to see that attacking field, and it continued. Hands up just around this virtual table, who'd fancy silly point to Andre Russell?
No, thanks. I'd be hiding, I think.
But that's so they managed. He somehow, I don't know what they did. Maybe they upped his contract or something. They managed to get Pollard in, I think, under the lid against Andre Russell. And I think to some extent that got in Andre Russell's head
narrowed down the target area.
Yeah, it meant that there was no. It took. So I think what Andre Russell probably wanted to do was just get a feel for the wicket, but by having that guy there for the pop up, or just to be in their face.
But not just that's what I'm saying. Not just having a guy there, having a massive guy in your face.
Yeah,
this is a distraction. It is a distraction.
It made. I think it probably had some kind of it looked like it had an effect on Andre Russell. So it was a combination of bad batting, bad thinking, really good captaincy, and then obviously finally we have to say Rahul Chahar bowled maybe the spell of the tournament. He doesn't have the figures, to back that up, because in 4 overs it's pretty rare that you're gonna. Well, you're not gonna get an Andre Russell type performance very often. But 4 overs, 4 for 27 at that point in the game really wrestled the game. It grabbed it by the scruff of the neck, as they say, and put it in Mumbai Indians' pocket, and they won pretty easily, didn't they? In the end, Max.
I was just looking at the scorecard at the end of the game, and it said Mumbai Indians won by 10 runs. Like, how have they managed that? They've really burgled that. I think Rahul Chahar really was a difference maker, and that like you said, his spell was brilliant. In particular, that 4th over where he took those 2 key wickets. But I think we should probably also apportion some blame some of which, having scored 57 and got his team into such a great position, I will lay at the feet of Nitish Rana, who charged Rahul Chahar off the last ball of his spell for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Chahar saw him coming and just pushed it out wide, and it was a comfortable stumping by de Kock in the end. And you're just thinking that, he's taken 3 wickets already. You've seen how spin's been on this wicket, and you've seen that he's looked the most dangerous. You've got 1 ball left of his spell, and you're nearing a run a ball required. You don't do that. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, it's difficult to blame. I mean, as an opening batsman, I would be annoyed if someone blamed me having scored 57 and then your middle order collapsing. But that was a really stupid thing to do, I think, and did expose them to a bit of risk, which ultimately Mumbai Indians exploited brilliantly. I think they looked like 2 different bowling units before and after that Chahar spell. I think at the opening they sort of missed their lines a bit and missed their lengths a bit, and gave KKR a bit of an opportunity to score at a good rate on that pitch. And then once they sort of dragged themselves back into it and sniffed some blood, they really tightened up, and they romped home in the end.
Yes, we had a couple of Twitter questions just to round this off. One Soul Indian asks, do you guys feel that these Mumbai Indian blokes are just lethal in all aspects? We've said that over and over again. I think they're the best T20 team in the world, and we saw them in really adverse conditions against a team that had a great game plan just find a way. And that's one of my least favourite sporting cliches, because usually there's something that can kind of explain what's happening. But today it's maybe there was like a fear factor involved in it to some extent. KKR saw that they could win this game and couldn't believe it, and then bottled it. And the other question that we had was sort of, have we seen a better death spell or combined death spell from a team than Mumbai Indians in this match? Off the top of my head, I can't think of a time a team sort of dragged it back so successfully from a position that looked pretty dead. I don't know if either of you two. I mean, there's a massive recency bias here, and I don't have that in my memory bank. I don't know if either of you two can contribute.
I mean, we've got a Harsha, haven't we? Harsha Patel. He did not too bad, taking the old fifer for RCB.
Yeah,
that wasn't a bad death spell. I think there is a bit where we just have to acknowledge, and we had a super chat from Ayush Bozal saying that KKR giving competition to Spurs for the bigger bottle jobs. This was a big bottle, and I think they were proper Spursy, and I think there's just fundamentally a bit there where like, not seeing this out could actually have a bit of a mental impact moving forward as well. And Mumbai Indians, it gives them kind of the wind in their sails. They know now that they're never going to be they're never down and out. They can always pull something back, and I think that's a huge thing for this IPL.
Max, just one for you.
Quickly. I was going to say I was all but ready to chalk KKR up as potential title contenders, having said that they seem to have put down the moniker of perhaps being a little a little flaky. That's what I thought after 14 overs.
We had a couple of questions, basically the same thing from Navneeth and Morgan, and at Morgan is a fraud, so I wonder what he thinks. Should Owen Morgan resign the captaincy of KKR?
That's a bit of a bold one. No, probably not, because the first half of the game, or the first 3 quarters of the game, went very well from a captaincy point of view, and I don't know necessarily if you would be blaming Owen Morgan for all of his batsmen capitulating at the end. I mean, you can blame him for getting out, but I don't think his middle and lower order would have approached those final overs in the way that he would have wanted them to. I'm not seeing his hands on that. Yeah,
fire Morgan. There's strong Richard Keys 2006 vibes to immediately reaching for fire the guy in charge. They won the first match. Really, they looked really good. For 80% of this match, they looked really good. It went wrong at the end. I don't think they need to burn the whole house down and start again. Anyway, let's should we quickly talk about tomorrow? Yesterday.
Well, before we do, Jack, there's one more thing on Mumbai Indians around: do they have to change their squad, their starting 11, for playing in Chennai? So you saw that Rohit Sharma bowled today. Max, do you think that they're going to need to bring in Priyesh Chawla or someone along those lines?
I said to you, I think halfway through the KKR batting innings that I fully expect Mumbai Indians to pick. Probably Pierce Chawla. That's not the name I used. I used Ross's nickname. In the
Donut
next
Boy?
match. Because I think they were crying out for another spinner at that point. You saw Rohit come on, and that actually was really useful for them because it gave them a little bit of leeway at the end to give Krunal a really crucial over towards the end, where he'd got, what did he go for, 13 off his 4 overs in the end. So that was really useful from them. Another good bit of captaincy. But yeah, I think that'll be useful because I think they kind of need that so they don't have to bowl Pollard. Right.
Yesterday then was a corker of a match. So in 30 seconds or so, I've got summary duties on this one. Rajasthan Royals took on the Punjab Kings Super 11. Or whatever they're called. Punjab Kings. And here's how it went. KL Rahul came out for the Kings and slaughtered his way, a very graceful slaughter, to 91 off 50 balls, playing the kind of innings that will definitely get him back in the India side. He was ably supported by Chris Gayle and, surprisingly, I think, Deepak Hooda, whose 64 off 28 balls will be forgotten in the mayhem of that fixture, but was crucial, ultimately, to the Punjab Kings coming out on top. In response, the Royals started pretty badly. Stokes was immediately caught, despite all of the Punjab Kings running into some kind of vortex of death. It looked like a demolition derby, but I think KL Rahul managed to get his gloves up there, snag the catch. Stokes incidentally smashed up his hand, dropping 1 of 2 catches earlier in the game. So we think might be out the rest of the IPL. We can talk about that in a sec. Anyway, from there, things got pretty interesting. So Punjab Kings, they slowly chipped away at the wicket column. But at the other end, or for the other team, Sanju Samson was blowing holes in the target. Belting 6 after 6 over cover. It was like an astonishing display of strength. Eventually, and I am skipping 15 overs here, it came down to Sanju Samson versus Arshdeep Singh in the final over of the game. And the young Arshdeep Singh was able to slay the Colossus as Sanju Samson, he basically took 2 goes at hitting a 6 to win it off the penultimate and then the final ball. Found a fielder for the penultimate ball and was caught off the last ball of the match, leaving Rajasthan Royals just short of the second highest chase in IPL history. Let's talk about the star man first, Sanju Samson. This will be the innings of the tournament, won't it, Max?
It would have been if they'd won. Unfortunately, it's just really, 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 really good. I think it's a real shame that it didn't result in a victory. I think because it was just sublime, wasn't it? I was watching watching the ball disappear everywhere, and we were looking at KL Rahul's innings, thinking, well, this is ridiculous, and then Sanju Samson just comes out and goes, oh, well, I can do that, but yeah, I think it is a shame that he didn't make it. I think there were a few drops in there from the.
There were some drops. There were a lot of drops in there. There've been a lot of drops in the IPL.
Bit of a drop fest, that innings, so it could have been over a lot quicker, but I'm glad it wasn't, because it made for a really thrilling finale.
So he ended up on 119 off his 63 balls, which meant the other guys still needed to get 103 off 57 balls. And that, I suppose, is why when you're batting first, you really do need to gun it. Because when it came down to it, that 221 scored by Punjab Kings, it was out of reach of even one of the most special innings that we have seen in the IPL. I mean, ever. I mean, genuinely ever. That was an amazing effort from Sanju Samson, and a bit of a shame he did fall at the final hurdle, if you like. The question that's sort of been going around Twitter, or the big debate, Ross, is should he have run off the second last ball? So he belts the ball out to deep extra cover. Him and Chris Morris sort of meet in the middle, and then Sanju Samson's like, nah, I'm going back. Chris Morris seemed to be upset by that. What was going on?
So I think to answer this properly, I need to position myself as Sandra Sampson. So 1 second. Right, so I'm in now. I'm in the brain. I'm in the brains trust. I'm kind of in the middle. I've got the most expensive IPL player at one end, who's got a pretty good strike rate, but I'm belting sixes like Max said all over the place. I think as skipper, you can do whatever the hell you want. Like he's alpha male in that scenario. I think he was well within his right to be like, I am Samson, I am king of man, and fair play to him. He went for it and didn't come off. That's unfortunate. It's the way it goes sometimes, right?
That's, by the way, if you haven't been with us for the whole IPL, we all drew teams to support at the beginning of the tournament. Ross, and the deal was we had to get some kit. Ross has obviously gone for the Rajasthan Royals hat. Max,
Yep.
Where's your kit?
I got a Chennai Super Kings training top. It has arrived. It is far too small, so I'll be sending it back and getting a bigger one.
My Mumbai Indians shirt arrives, which is definitely not a real shirt. I know it's. I've been. I don't know where it's. I don't know where this has come from, but it's coming tomorrow, so you will see it shortly. People at home. Yeah, I didn't really get the debate, to be honest. I think the right thing from Sanju Samson's point of view was to try and hit a six off the second last ball, and if he didn't, try and hit a six off the last ball. Chris Morris looked like he was swinging an oar in the middle. He wasn't going to do anything, was he? Go for it yourself. Earlier in the game, and we've touched on KL Rahul, but he was like in awesome form, and lots of people on Twitter are interested in your response to this, Ross. You absolutely hate KL Rahul. You call him the ball eater, which has got negative cricket connotations, but there's definitely some subtext there as well that we don't go into in detail on this podcast. What did it make you feel sad to see KL Rahul doing so well?
No, so none of my cricketing opinions come from a deep-rooted hatred of the person. It is actually their ability to play cricket in the right format. And KL Rahul demonstrated throughout the whole of the last IPL and the England versus India T20 series that he'd forgotten how T20 cricket works, and it was all about King legend Rahul. What he has been doing is listening to this podcast and putting himself. But the best leaders put themselves below the teams. That's what it's all about. It's all about making people stand on top of your brilliance. And King Legend finally realised that. 91 off of 50 balls. That is a fantastic innings. Exactly what was required from them. And let's hope to see this throughout the whole tournament. We don't just want to see it for one game, because you're not going to get a reputation of one game. It has to be the whole tournament. So I'm going to reserve judgment just for now.
Yeah, so a few other things, and then we'll go on to some chat conversations. We've got a few questions in on Twitter, but I think we've managed to work them well into the flow of the episode, even if I've forgotten to read out some names, so apologies about that. I mentioned Deepak Huda. Another guy we should mention, I think, is Rian Parag, who scored, a really handy 25-ish off 9 balls. Max, we don't really know as cricket fans, and I think the whole cricketing world hasn't quite worked out how to value a really explosive but very short innings. How useful do you reckon they are in T20 cricket?
It kind of depends, doesn't it, on the situation. So when you're in a game like this where the pitch is pretty good and you're trying to go for an absolutely mammoth total, they're invaluable, because the last thing, the thing that will stop you from taking your total from, say, 190, 200 to 220, which ultimately becomes even unattainable in the face of one of the most brilliant innings you're ever likely to see. Those are the sorts of innings that make that difference. Those 9 balls could easily have been 13, and then suddenly the result of the game is completely different. So I really do think they are, in a high-scoring game like that, they are absolutely crucial. And it was brilliant. When you mentioned Rohan Parag, I thought we were going to be talking about his bowling action.
Yes,
which was something very very interesting.
I've never seen anyone with a lower bowling action. It was freakish. I'm not even sure.
Well, not since they outlawed bowling underarm.
Yeah.
He's
Pretty
actually.
impressive.
Did you actually know he's won? He's what is it? He's Rajasthani 10-pin bowling champion 2013,
Shut
2014.
Shut up.
No, of course he's not. No.
Right, here's the last couple of things from that then, because I do think we should give some credit to two young Indian guys who were terrific with the ball. I'm, of course, talking about Mohammed Shami. No, no, he was good, Mohammed Shami. Arshdeep Singh and Chetan Sakaria, whose combined age is 2 years more than Chris Gale's.
Back next week for tedious stats.
Pretty good from those two. Their figures. So they bowled the final over in alternate innings. So Sakaria, he went for 5 runs off the last over of the first innings. Finished with figures of 31 for 3 against Chris Morris's 41 for 2. And Arshdeep Singh, he took figures of 35 for 3. Obviously bowled that over to Sanju Samson where he had to defend 12, which looked pretty difficult, to be honest, for a guy who was, he'd gone full T-Rex mode by that point. His final figures 35 for 3. Riley Meredith and Jai Richardson as the comparisons, the overseas comparisons. 8 overs, 104 for 2.
Oh.
They've been bombed, haven't they? Those two, Max.
Yeah, and we after Joe Richardson's beautiful Yorker to Josh Butler, which had the seam position of an absolutely ripped leg spin, and we thought, here we are, here's what Dan Weston's been telling us all about Joe Richardson. But no, turns out the other thing that Dan Weston's been talking about is the Big Bash recency bias, and and they got absolutely hammered. Both new to the IPL, so I'm sure they will be all the better for that experience. But really, really good to see both of those players, both those teams, the Indian players that is, are handling themselves really well, especially in those really high pressure situations in the final over of the innings.
Sure. Right. Ross, should we go over, do a few questions from our chat? Have we had any super chats? Give us some super chats. We want all your money.
We only had one today, and
that
was
about.
Yeah. We've only had one today, and that was around Spurs by KKR being bottle jobs. There's plenty of stuff in the chat around kind of Morgan's captaincy, etc. We spoke about earlier. But when it comes to this game, Ben Stokes has been ruled out of the IPL 2021. So Aditya Singh, let's try and answer something for him. What are they going to do there? So what are actually Rajasthan Royals' options? They've already lost Jofra Archer, and as much as the good press came out today that he's back in nets, I can't see him flying out and playing in the IPL. I think England will take priority for him. Ben Stokes with a fractured index finger, which is going to be important because that's the one you point blame for other people of when you drop a catch.
Or if you want to start a fight, it's good to be like, what did you say?
No, you
What
can't
did you
punch
say?
someone with a broken finger.
That is very true, Max. So, Max, who do you think is going to replace him? Are they going to stay within the squad? Or are they going to look for a replacement? Can you replace Ben Stokes?
In this team, yes, you can, because they used 8 bowlers in that Punjab Kings innings, so they can do without Ben Stokes bowling 1 for 12. That's fine. And
do without batting as well.
And if he opens the batting, then they just need to find another overseas opening batsman who we may have mentioned before from the unsold at the auction, who probably should have gone to a couple of other teams who had people pull out but didn't, and that's Alex Hales. So for me, just bring in Alex Hales, open with him, send Ben Stokes home, and you're probably actually better off.
I genuinely think that a better option for them from day one would have been Liam Livingstone. I think he fills a better position in their batting order as someone who can hit lower down, and he's a better bowler than Stokes. I'm talking specifically about T20 cricket here. I don't think that, like, if I was building an all-format international side, obviously you want Stokes about. But Stokes is one of, if not the most overrated T20 cricketer in the world. This isn't a bad thing for Rajasthan Royals. I just don't think it's a bad thing at all. No. They should be able to replace him reasonably easily.
Talk Sport is going to be at you, Jack. If they hear you talk about Ben Stokes, Sir Ben Stokes like that. Darren Goff will explode. Anyways, right, let's move. So there is another one here saying that from Regis around the cricket podcast members hired as consultants, advisors for each of their 3 teams. So what would be the advice I give to Samson? Max, what would be advice you give to Dhoni? And Jack, what about Rohit? So Jack, let's start with you. Can you give advice to the man that is Rohit Sharma? And what would it be?
They just keep going. The only strategy advice I would give is longer term. When it comes to the auction that's coming up, they need to think carefully about whether they retain people like Rohit Sharma, given their age, or even like Kieron Pollard. On the one hand, you don't want to dump an elite level player back into the auction for someone to take and then get pulverised next year. On the other hand, you don't want, and loads of franchises have got these players knocking about. I'm thinking about you here, Max. You don't want a bunch of old duffers on overpaid contracts that you can't shift and you have to play for 3 seasons. So that's what they need to be thinking about now, I think.
Max, you've got the unenviable task of walking into Mahendra Singh Dhoni's office and going, "Listen here, you. What advice are you going to give him?"
I think I would probably enter that room with all the intention of saying that you maybe need to let all your squad go next season and buy some younger players. But I think after about 5 minutes of talking to him, he'd have probably won me round to his way of thinking, and I'll have just completely melted under the pressure because it's Dhoni. I don't have the cojones to take on Dhoni in that situation.
Fair enough. And if I was to talk with Samson, it would definitely be a case of still back yourself. The build up, the preamble to Rajasthan Royal Star was all Samson talking a big game. He then backed it up with a century and showed Chris Morris, who is really the alpha in the team. Regardless of how much it cost, I think it was a great approach. So more of the same.
Here's the problem for Rajasthan, though. Yeah, they have managed to lose despite having like a guy on their team turn in like an all IPL ever performance. That's how bad the other guys are on that team. It's just such a. I mean, why are they bowling 8 bowlers to begin with? Like, what's the game plan there? Why? I mean, like, yeah, I just when I see something like that, the bad teams in the IPL, they rely on individual performances to bail them out. And when a team has like an amazing individual performance like that, and it still can't do anything against another one of the not great teams, let's face it, you just feel a bit sorry for them. They could lose 10 games this season.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising, right? It would not be surprising, and yeah, I completely agree that if you've got a bowler, go in with a plan. It kind of looks like they go in and they're kind of sitting there going, "Well, we think spin works on this pitch. We'll give it a go." Shreyas Gopal goes around the place, and then it's just like, "Parag, what do you bowl?" Anyway, that's I think the majority of the comments also talk about kind of Morgan and how his strike rate of 125 is an issue for KKR, but we've kind of spoken about them already. So, Jack, I think it's probably time to talk about tomorrow's game and who's going to win in that one.
Right. So tomorrow's game. Sorry, I've got Rajasthan Royals.
Sunrisers Hyderabad versus the mighty RCB.
So Sunrisers Hyderabad v the mighty RCB. They are 2 cricket teams. They're 2 cricket teams who won one game and one lost one game. So Royal Challengers Bangalore, they kicked off their IPL season pretty handily, I think, picking up a win, and Sunrisers didn't. I haven't prepared a preview on this, so does anyone else want to do it?
This is high level stuff.
Yeah,
you don't need to. I just want to view on who's
hand over to me.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll take it back on myself. So I think from Sunrisers Hyderabad point of view, they had a shocker last time out. They need to really rectify what was going on. But RCB seem to have fallen into that bit of actually not a horrendous auction strategy. They seem to have their players in the right positions, which was kind of a masterstroke really compared to some of the other RCB seasons that have gone on. And they've obviously got some world-class players in that lineup. I think because of the structural issues that we talked about and the Vijay Shankar gate that happened, hopefully they learn from that and can actually put that right. Max, you used to love Sunrisers, but let's talk about RCB a little bit. Where do you think the benefit is going to be in that game? Do you think it's going to be Glenn Maxwell, Virat Kohli kind of smashing it to all parts, or is it going to be Harsha Patel leading the way again at the end?
I honestly, I don't know how to call this one. I think it's going to be really tight, and because we saw Sunrisers in that game, their first game. The players that we expected to perform for them and to like back up Rashid Khan didn't do the business, right? I mean, we were saying, weren't we? Where were these guys in the India-England series? Why couldn't they have bowled that kind of stuff against the England players? So I mean, if they perform like that, they've got no chance. But if they actually play to the level that we know they can, I think it's going to be a really tight game, and it could come down to given what we said. I think it could come down to a Virat Kohli style calm run chase, I think.
All right, nice one, Max.
That's where I'm putting my money.
Last question from the live chat, and Jack, I'll throw this one over to you. Jonathan Daniel says, was Shivam Dubé's performance the same as Vijay Shankar's for the Sunrisers Hyderabad?
I think that's a little bit unfair, isn't it? Vijay Shankar's performance for Sunrisers was an aberration, and I think when you're chasing 221, I think, what did he do? Shivam Dubé, he came in. I mean, I'm assuming he means with the ball, because with the bat, he got 25 or 15 balls. That's like, it might not be the 2 runs a ball that you need at that point in the innings, but you got Sanju Samson hitting rockets into the upper atmosphere. Some of those cricket balls are in orbit. You can afford to go at 150 in that situation. I mean, I think Shivam Dubé's value in an IPL team is really with the bat. You don't want to be relying on him to bowl too often, because he is, to be honest, the sort of guy that
can go for 20 off one.
Would only be first change at like village cricket standard. He bowls pretty slowly. He bowls pretty erratically. You can see why he was the 8th bowler they turned to, can't you?
Well, that is all the questions. Shami took the catch, not KL Rahul, Jack, according to the live chat. So it's tomato. But anyway, we'll be back maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, to talk about more IPL. We'll see.
I am about tomorrow, so we'll try and do tomorrow. But at the same time, sometimes we're busy like we were yesterday. We'll let you know on Twitter @thecricketpod. Join us over there. That's 50 minutes, fellas. That's 20 minutes more than we said we would do. Let's call it a day.
Like and subscribe, everybody, and follow Woodstock on social media.